We're now organizing for the next session, which has a distinguished speaker and two distinguished discussants. Would they please come forward?
So while we're getting set up, no. So I'm a huge fan of clear thinking, and Pramod, I thought your presentation was just perfect, very, very clear and succinct. It's my great pleasure. In addition to being a fan of clear thinking, I'm also a huge fan of rigor, and it's a great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dylan Schmorrow. I urge you all to read Dylan's complete bio because it's long and distinguished, sort of like that Star Trek episode where the computer keeps going. But I just want to say he's the chief scientist at Soar Technologies, which is really trying to develop a rigorous model of cognition and apply it to augmenting human cognition. He retired from the Navy in 2013. He's a winner of Navy's highest award in science and engineering. And you've got a lot to tell us, and I want to get to it. So, Dylan, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'll say a few things while I get my laptop set up here. First off, I'm really privileged I feel very privileged to be here. It's a great group. NSF has been amazing. And, you know, it's always fun to come up here to this neck of the woods. There's a few good schools, I understand. So we've been having fun. Now, hopefully, I will be able to get my presentation up there. And I want to point at a few things today and share a few things about my background. So really, right now, I did just retire. And a lot of what I'm going to share with you is what I did while I was active duty in the military. I retired as a Navy captain last year, and I was very, very fortunate because I didn't just head to places that were, you know, out at sea, although I did a little of that. My last 15 years, I really worked in Washington, D.C. I worked at DARPA for 5 years as a program manager, ONR, the Office of Naval Research, for 10 years as a program manager. I directly managed a number of big initiatives for everyone from Admiral Gaffney to Admiral Cohen to Admiral Bill Landay. Worked with people like Tony Tether, Frank Fernandez, and a number of folks like that. So it was exciting. I also worked at places like the Naval Research Lab, so I learned a little bit about rigor there. It's a very tough place. And I wanted to share stuff with you today on the next brain, augmented cognition. This is kind of crazy, and it's going to be like speed dating, because if I'm not mistaken, I have about 20 minutes. I'm going to try to get us a little bit caught up on schedule here, so I'll be listening for the fire engine. But I want to tell you a quick story as I start off. It hit me really well about what we're trying to do here or NSF is trying to do. I loved it ever since Grace's introduction yesterday. It sounded a little bit like NSF is trying to be like DARPA. Now, I mean that in a good way. I heard things about really how do you move the curve so you're doing things faster, better. How do we open our minds? And the talk we just heard today about the challenges we face as an institution. NSF is absolutely world-class. It was inspired by the Office of Naval Research, I should mention. But NSF is particularly very good like that. And I've sat on many panels, and it's very rigorous. But at DARPA, let me tell you a story. As a DARPA PM, I did something that I don't think you could get away with at NSF. I remember somebody put in a proposal, and I said, I want to fund this proposal. And the contracting officer said, no way. The PI hasn't even graduated from high school. He had it. It was some guy wanting to build something in his house for me. And I said, hell no, I'm a DARPA PM. I can do anything I want. And I want to fund this guy. I did win. I was able to fund him. They did make me drag a government engineer out there to inspect his tools and make sure he could do it. And he could. And there were no rules. So, I mean, he delivered something for 1,000th of the cost it would have cost us to have somebody else do it. It was pretty cool. So I do encourage you to open your mind because we all collectively are NSF. Because one thing that always sometimes I get frustrated with my NSF colleagues is the program managers, the directors and people, they'll often call themselves observers of the process. And they are because they put a lot of the decisions into our hands. Well, I want them to make it a dirty mess. So I'm going to jump through some slides, show you a cool movie, and really the bottom line here is advancing and applying artificial intelligent technologies to make people more prepared, informed, capable. I want computational partners. This was really got me started in my original research on human centrifuges, where I'd put a human in a cockpit, I'd spin them up to 10 Gs, I would have lots of complex systems that they were having to run for half hour, studying decision making, and I kept thinking to myself, why can't we actually have people as part of the avionics platform on a single platform? So that's 10, 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I'm getting old. So I was thinking very small. What I love about this group and what I hear NSF is doing is how do we get big smart systems so it's no longer just one person in a cockpit, where no longer is it we're talking human-machine interface, because that's so 20th century. We really want this human-computer symbiosis where the person is just another part of the avionics system. It's not that they're interacting with the avionics. So I love this. If you have not read this charge to the team, you must. I think this is a wonderfully well-written first paragraph there. Our understanding is trained because humans are part of the real-time control loop, and modeling human behavior is a challenging issue. It is, but this is the 21st century, and we have technologies both from the human systems. I'm going to show you some stuff where I believe we can put like gauges on our brains right now, so we can already begin to jack people into the system, and we know what's going on. We have gauges that can tell whether you're paying attention right now. I can tell what gauges whether or not you're doing math stuff in your head versus verbal stuff. I have gauges that tell me, these memory, attentional, executive function, sensory input. So I believe we can do this, and I believe by having artificial intelligence that isn't just yesterday's Bayesian network or neural network, but are really cognitive architectures, and there's a number of them out there, that really can help us into this interactive task learning type of system. So how can we really have technology and gain those rewards so that we actually know what's going on in our head? So, not just that. So this is what I would love to have, and I think this one's not going to play, and that's fine. So I actually have it here. So this is what I would really like to have.
I'm supposed to start with these operation programs first. That's Major Bar and Shed. Let's do something a little more fun. How about combat training?
I would really love in the military, especially if we can just do combat training like this, have a little electrode in your head, and do it.
Jiu-jitsu. I'm going to learn jiu-jitsu.
So this is science fiction, but I would argue I'm going to show you some data and results that suggest there are ways that we can begin to put people into the system. Right now, it's not going to be invasive like that, and it's not going to be that quick. But I wanted to share that clip with you because I think it's at least motivational for me for where we're at. Now, I always have skeptics, but I like to point at recent literature. Wall Street Journal, the golden age of neuroscience has arrived. Now, one challenge is it has, but we talked about those silos earlier. And when we're talking about building these big smart systems, I remember I'm going to share you with some results of a DARPA program I did called Augmented Cognition. I was given roughly about $100 million to do a really cool stuff. I had some very good friends at O&R who were basic scientists who did neuroscience. And they said, this is preposterous, Dylan. You don't know what you're talking about. You are a behavioral scientist. You don't understand the fundamental mechanisms that are going on in the brain. Guess what? We don't. Guess what? My great-grandchildren who become neuroscientists will still, I argue, not understand the fundamental mechanisms of the brain. We should continue to do research in it. It's highly important. However, let's try to do something right now with the information that we have, and we can do that. Artificial intelligence. People right now don't even agree what AI can do. I mean, my good buddy Elon, great. Seriously, we're going to have Skynet in 5 years. He must not be attending the meetings I'm attending. I don't think we're there yet. However, AI systems will prove useful long before they become self-aware. So I am not worried about Skynet right now. I am actually more worried about how I'm going to deal with all these overwhelming interfaces, all this overwhelming technology, all this overwhelming information, this great colossal of this smart system. Maybe it's not smart yet. Massive information. How do we tie it together? And we do have the keys to doing it. I think some of it is looking inside the human brain. I think, of course, we're not going to have these high-density EEGs, but maybe we'll be wearing cool stuff, cutting-edge, little like goggles. That might be one way to do it. I'm not going to worry about it because I believe we're going to come up with a truly interactive symbiosis of human computers tightly partnered up here. So these slides will be available. And what I want to make sure I'm going to jump through these definitions because there's lots of them. I'm not even going to tell them to you, but you get the slides and you'll get them. One challenge in this field of human-computer symbiosis is we love to come up with new terms. I came up with this one. I kind of like it. But there's also, what is it? It's a closed-loop system. In the same way, if you build a car, I remember Daimler Chrysler, I used to fund them as a DARPA PM. Amazing. They have $8 to $9 billion of R&D in Germany doing some amazing stuff over there at Daimler. And in the same way, they have these amazing CAN buses. Tons of information on the car. Massive, great information. They had nothing on the driver. Maybe build a model or two of a driver. But wouldn't it be neat to have it in real time? I'll show you a video that we did there. But there's also terms like neural ergonomics. Very relevant and very important. Terms like operational neuroscience. So if you go to Google, you might not find something in augmented cognition. You might find in one of these two. Adaptive automation. I usually have someone jump up. I even had an old colleague at MIT who would yell at me constantly that I was making up new terms. But adaptive automation is absolutely part of this. Brain-computer interface absolutely is too. But you know what? For brain-computer interface, I don't think the future is me sitting here trying to control a robot going left, right, think left, right, think left, right. You know why? Because I can drive a car, drive a vehicle, and talk. What I need brain-computer interface for is not controlling something left or right. I need it to help me and facilitate cognitive decision-making, and I think that those same gauges then can inform our bigger systems on how the massive system actually can support me even better. Not just me, groups of me, all of us, teams, disparate, homogeneous, heterogeneous. Cognitive neuroscience is another area. It's absolutely part of this. Human factors and ergonomics. Bunch of great definitions. I think I'll put it all in a blender, and I think this is the future of human systems. So I want to show you a film, and now this one's going to be about 5 minutes, a little longer. This one is right before I retired from the government. It took us a long time to get it completely approved, but it is completely approved now, and you can get this on the web. But this was a vision that we had for how we would see human systems in autonomy and autonomous systems kind of within more of a military environment, but you'll see some medical aspects, and I'll share some key features.
Indigenous forces during their mission to locate, evacuate, and treat the injured warfighter.
Computational partners activated.
Neural interface engaged. Preferences imported.
He's not here. We're getting close to the link-up with the indigenous force. What do you see? Launch UAVs.
Positive ID, 260 degrees, 800 meters.
Target location unknown. I've got route guidance.
Physiological display activated. Predict another 45 minutes of peak performance. Right there. Command authorization.
Target located. Firing.
Alpha 2, clear to proceed.
Hey, sir, how you doing?
Did you pay your mother? I'm gonna take care of you. You're on your way home now.
The training session is completed. After action reviews will begin immediately with all participants and their computational partners.
Current training objectives achieved, performance record updated, strengths and weaknesses will continue to be addressed in future training simulations.
The Department of Defense invites national and
I will jump right back to my slide presentation. I wanted to share that with you. There's a number of things there that we saw, highlighted a bunch of emerging capabilities. So this is things that we believe, or I believe, are very near term here that we're going to be seeing kind of come in. And the reason I wanted to share this with you today is because I think it's highly relevant to smart systems, because we're going to be able to, we have new understanding of the information we can get off of people. I believe there's a number of things that why we can do this. It's not like it just kind of materialized. There's a lot of things there. The augmented cognition systems that I shared with you there have a lot of the information there in terms of getting information off. And so in the last few minutes, I actually want to share with you just some data that we had gotten from real things. So imagine cognitive prosthetics in essence in the same way we would think of our typical prosthetics. But what are we really trying to do? Build the tools and technologies to augment human cognitive abilities. That was my objective. That's what what I think we should be now doing, and I'm going to try to show that we did accomplish this, is now move into, imagine all that same information now feeding into our optimization for just the bigger systems that we go to support humans, groups of humans, and everything else. This information is now available. I think now if we couple that with a lot of the artificial intelligence technology we have, we can do there too. But again, now to go back to, not saying I understand the way the brain works. I don't know if you're thinking blue-orange. I don't know if you're thinking purple-banana. But I'm just saying, cognitive psychology, if I believe there's some bottlenecks, like attention, executive function, working memory, if I can put a gauge on it. And I really have to mention Denny Profit and Randy Pauscher, my two co-conspirators way back when we did this. We talked about building things like an info cockpit for how we would do this. But for me, this removes the burdens of technology to human system, human, and even system performance. It's not just about cognitive sensing, though, and you can easily walk away with that. It's really smart systems must be able to intelligently partner with humans. I want this to be an eye chart. There's lots of stuff if you're a neuroscientist or you're a psychologist you might be studying. Interbeat heart interval, frequency of neuronal population, a lot of science there. All I care about, again, is I'm like a Far Side cartoon where I want to raise my hand and go, my brain is full, can I be excused? So I'm measuring gauges there. The gauges I'm thinking about right now are these types of things that we can detect today. Error detection, arousal, memory encoding, working memory, different verbal and spatial and attention. Bottom line, I want to mitigate bottlenecks. That's what I was trying to do, but the same information, I argue, can feed into the systems. At the turn of the century, we already could do things like detecting brain activity in real time. We could show memory improvement by having systems dynamically adapt to the user to show that they could, when memory was the task. We could do verbal and spatial. Computers can tell whether you're switching between verbal and spatial with less than a minute, actually less than 2 seconds. Event detection, error detection, can actually notice when performance by noticing when you realize there's an error, slips or mistakes, or maybe you don't realize you've made an error. That's another important information. We actually had to prove this at something at DARPA. We proved it in things like in-flight missile retargeting, working memory task, 642% increase in successfully serviced targets with it turned on. Lots more I can tell you about that if you connect to me on LinkedIn or send me an email. Unmanned air vehicles. So this is controlling multiple entities at one time. With AUGCOG stuff, this type of sensing turned on with mitigations, and I'll tell you about that in a moment, 241%. So real things that we've improved on. I will mention the 108% was with Daimler, and that was a secondary task. Everything else was a primary task that we were improving. So we already can overcome this. This actually just shows you the calculations. I'll skip. But attentional bottlenecks, how do you do a task? How do you mitigate? And our mitigation strategies here were really what we came up with. Tactical navigation queuing, communication scheduling. You can imagine how that might do it. But then, how would you actually do it within these broader systems where we'd have somebody running around out in a field. You'd have gauges that were measuring what's going on in real time. You'd have your AI logic down here in the bottom left that's deciding what it should do. How should the system provide support to the user? Whether it's notifications, messages, information, facilitating various things. Same thing for sensory input. We found out the best thing for mitigation was modality switching and scheduling. We did this in cars. You're driving around. There's things I can show you later that where cars, have challenges while it's driving. You're detecting brain signals. You have all the other avionics on board the car, knowing what it's doing. Again, this is what we did with individuals. We did the same thing for working memory and command and control. We did the same thing for executive function. And you'll have all these slides. But to me, the one thing to take away, if I were to try to go design something right now, is if I have these types of challenges, attention, executive function, sensory input, working memory, these are mitigation technologies. So guess what? Yes, you can detect cognitive state in humans. But what are you going to do about it is really the important thing. And this is actually some precursors to figuring out what to do about it. So a decade ago, we saw these numbers. That's a decade ago. There's a lot of publications that are out there. In Springer's artificial intelligence series, we had 78,000 chapter downloads last year alone. So people are starting to think about it. So where are we today, November 21st? Go back, this is text taken from the NSF charge from the directors. How do we do this? Starting to produce responsive and adaptive environments able to interact with humans. But why focus on this? Because our solutions can inspire the way people think, emulate human behavior. Our systems can anticipate, simulate how people are doing. That's why I go back to the high-level cognitive architectures. Interact with humans naturally. Because the more we do it with kind of that type of AI, we can actually I think, interact more effectively and leverage this information. The realm of cognitive architectures integrates perception and motor control, relational representation and situation goals. These are key items that allow systems to learn. And so think of interactive task learning. If I order a new personal service robot from Amazon Prime and I open up the box and I push the start button, many people today think, well, it should just start working perfectly. Well, no, I would think that you're going to have to train it. You're going to have to interact with it. It's going to have to understand my wants and needs, not just the cognitive sensing I said, but I want to say, no, that's not the way I make my drinks. I want you to shake the ice like this. And then it has a cognitive architecture that can actually adapt and adopt to it. It is the convergence of multiple domains, focus on one outcome, natural human technology interactions. The opportunity I see is imagine a world where we can understand the language of the brain. It's one of the greatest challenges of all. What's amazing, though, is we can actually find some statistical regularities in spite of the fact that we have shifting baselines. Just because you tuned to me today, Dylan Schmorrow right now is not the same Dylan Schmorrow in 5 hours from now. I'm not the same Dylan Schmorrow in 2 days. So how do we deal with this? The risks, I think we talk about, it's not just a big data issue. Lots of people continue to look at these challenges as a big data issue. The system's always changing, it's not. And I think advanced technology should be viewed as a means to an end, assisting the human activities. So when we do that, I think I'm almost there, truly interactive symbiosis, this closely tight partnership. So what do we have to do now? Understand the human element in social, cultural, technical systems, understand how to deal with unbounded uncertainties, and optimize outcomes for the humans and systems is where we go. And bottom line, how can smart systems help us reap the rewards of the digital age without overwhelming us with these complex systems and impossible interfaces? And that's it, 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
Ollie's going to have some comments and questions for you. But first, let me briefly introduce Ollie DeWeek. He's Associate Professor of Aeronautics and Astronautics at Engineering Systems, Co-Director of the Center for Complex Engineered Systems, and Secretary and Treasurer for the Council of Engineering Systems Universities. Before joining MIT, he was liaison engineer and later engineering program manager on an FA-18 aircraft program at McDonnell Douglas. A lot of other significant things, but jumping to the chase on the topic of rigor, significant results include the adaptive weighted sum method for resolving trade-offs among multiple objectives, time-expanded decision networks, the delta design structure matrix, and technology infusion analysis, and the SpaceNet and CityNet simulation environments.
Ollie.
Great. Thank you very much, Jim. Wow, Dylan, that was inspiring and scary at the same time. I don't know if the audience felt the same way. Very, very great possibilities here, the augmented cognition that you presented to us, and could be very scary at the same time. And that's a little bit my first question for you. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave at 10 to teach, so I only have a couple questions. But the first one is about what are the potential, optimizing the level of assistance that we give to humans. It seems very important. On the one hand, we could automate everything completely and take the human entirely out of the picture. That's full automation. And I think there's been some accidents, for example, in the nuclear industry or, Air France 447, where you could argue if the humans had not intervened, the automation eventually would have prevented the accident. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is we have no help whatsoever. It's just us and pencils, basically. So what's the right mix or the right degree of augmentation, taking everything into account? I have teenagers too. Spell checking, right? Spell checking is a form of human augmentation. And I'm still not sure whether spell checking, my teenagers doing their essays with spell checking is a good idea. Because on the one hand, they get lazy. On the other hand, if you do it enough, well, you actually learn what the spell checker actually teaches you to spell correctly. So I still don't know. What do you think about this?
Well, excellent, and it's something I've given a lot of thought to, especially when it comes to the level of automation and support. And actually, one reason I even went to the company after I retired Soar because the underlying philosophy that Soar has, and I personally have, is that we really do AI not to do full automation. That it really is to kind of going back to supporting the human, making them more prepared, more capable, able to execute more appropriately. So I think if you're down a path of developing the AI just to do it fully autonomously, certainly you want fail-safes. The pilot goes completely unconscious. Would it be neat if the plane could auto-recover? Sure. And there's some challenges of when you do that. So understanding when you do that is a challenge. But first off, I think the most important thing is the underlying principle is that it's there to provide support. Now, one thing that I discovered when I was originally doing the research is I thought a lot of the support was going to be, I'm in crisis mode, I'm doing 50 things at once, I'm spinning 50 plates on sticks and I'm running around and I need help with that. No, actually a lot of it is when you're incredibly bored and there's nothing to do. How does this system keep you engaged? So a lot of our types of errors, whether it's power plant errors or other human mistakes, is don't just think about the automation taking care of everything in the background and just alerting you when there's a problem, but maybe even knowing, hey, right now, you're not really engaged. Hey, Dylan, could you balance the fuel tanks right now? They're kind of a little, it's a system, the system could normally do that, but maybe it can tell my arousal levels have gone down. So in essence, it helps me. Spell check, I think that's a perfect example. There's times when I have a 9, 11, and 12-year-old, when, guess what? I need it on, the assignment is due in like 20 minutes, and let's make sure this thing's done. I need you to get to bed. Other times when it doesn't need to be on. So it would almost be more interesting. It'd be more interesting to me to see how those systems would kind of dynamically adapt. However, so answer to your question is I think that we don't have the full automation. I think we should go into building AI systems and cognitive sensing systems so that it's all about support, not just to the one person, but everyone. Now, I also think it can greatly inform the systems that are trying to provide us services. The more my thermostat knows what I'm doing, the better. Not just building a mathematical model that's fixed, but it's kind of keeping up with me in real time. Or even the bigger systems that are shipping things to me, transportation systems, they need to know what's going on. Think about the smart cities, things that whatever we call smart planet, smart cities. I'm now talking about, well, the people should be a part of that. Whether or not that parking spot is empty, maybe there's something Dylan could be utilized. However, the one caveat there, and we could have a whole 2-day workshop on this, is the ethics. Because all of a sudden so I have a degree in philosophy, and I love those discussions because in the same way right now, I get a little freaked out with Facebook knowing where I'm at right now. And, my different devices kind of keeping track of me. Freaks me out, want to kind of talk about that, turn it on. I can see how these types of systems could be scary too, but I think, technology can always be used for ill. A baseball bat can be used to hit a ball really far, or it can be used to hurt me. So these technologies need to have those types of discussions as well.
Great. Talking about engineering ethics, that's exactly what I'm going to teach at 10. So, great answer. So maybe we'll turn it to the audience. Or Jim, did you?
Yeah, I have one quick question for Dylan. So let's say I want to bankroll some high school students or college students to start playing with this technology. How much is it going to set me back? What's real today, and where is Soar technology?
So wow. So Soar Tech, certainly a wonderful AI company, and I give a big plug for that. But I've got to give you a plug for a not-for-profit that's standing up right now called Brain Hackers. So Chris Forsythe is at Sandia National Labs. He's about to retire. I don't know. You know, he's getting older. He wants to do something exciting. He's been working with junior high and high school students, particularly wouldn't it be great in the same way the Lego robotics, you go, here's your package, go build something. Chris, Brain Hackers, has been working, this not-for-profit, to be able to go, here's your neural sensing gear. You can do it because even an 8th and 9th grader can actually hook up and build these gauges today. So Brain Hackers, I can point you to it if you're interested, but you can do that. And let's say you're a little more sophisticated. You maybe want to have a startup company in your basement or your garage and do this. You know, you can actually go buy this type of equipment from a number of different sources and start hacking away today.
Great. So let's thank Dylan one more time, Ollie, and then we're going to open it up to questions for Dylan. So Ollie, thank you. I know you have to run. So Dylan, stay put. Ollie, have a good class on ethics. And Dick has a question. Oh, only one.
But I will be here the rest of the day, and please connect to me on LinkedIn or send me an email.
Okay. Who's? Oh, there it is.
We have one back there.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the talk, sir. The video that you showed with the military scenario was very interesting, but that's a very constrained environment, and something like that doesn't necessarily scale. I'm a defense contractor, and we see size, weight, power, bandwidth being such constraints. How do you see overcoming those constraints to make these kind of technologies viable, especially when you're talking about bandwidth and cost? Those are the big ones.
Perfect. So really, two answers to that. One will be the DoD answer, and one will be the commercial. Within DoD, when I was developing lots of this stuff, we always took in consideration what was going on in the current acquisition programs for a lot of medical sensing, and for the computational stuff. So we didn't want to add additional complexity to what was going to be worn. The exciting thing is, from a medical standpoint, unfortunately, because of traumatic brain injury and a lot of the blast injuries, they've had to develop more medical sensors, and leveraging a lot of that existing technology is one way to make it affordable for cost, weight, performance, things like that. So did that. From a commercial sector, I was approached by a big commercial company a couple months before I retired. I wish it would have been a couple months after, because then I could have taken their money, but they'd offered me like $500 to talk to them for 15 minutes on this, and I couldn't take it. But I talked to them for hours. Commercial companies, think about your Apple Watch that's coming out. A lot of this, the Android watches you have now, they're already starting to do stuff where they're doing health and fitness. So I think one way we're doing that, again, is going to be on a lot of these health applications. I'm kind of tired of my friends posting on Facebook that they ran 5 miles with their Nike shoes. But, hey, it's kind of cool. But I think more and more you're going to see where now, wouldn't it be great if you went to 7-Eleven and you were able to buy for $19.99 a Bluetooth-enabled headband that now is sensing verbal spatial working memory? Or how about the camera? The camera that's in my computer right now, I open it, wouldn't it be neat? It can look into my pupil. And if it's good enough, it can look into my pupil and tell me whether, not where I'm looking, you know, where you're looking is easy, but the way the eyeball is twitching, whether you're doing a math or a verbal task. So I think you're going to see a lot more mobile technologies, and I think in the next couple years, it'll be hard, because one thing is, a lot of the technology that's out there to go buy, like if you went to go buy brain sensing stuff, there is a lot of crap out there that's just a lot of noise. So you do have to be a little rigorous when you figure out what you're going to buy. But I believe the commercial enterprises that we're seeing right now, commercial companies, are going to be doing a lot of it for health and fitness. And all that same stuff, same way we did on DoD, we can jump on that and leverage that, and you're going to see this more broadly accepted, and you're going to see it all over the place. Thank you very much.
And I just want to make one last comment. Sorry, Dick. So I posted some slides to SlideShare. I had a few other comments we didn't have time for, and it includes a list of conferences. I think you're going to be at AHFE in Las Vegas, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
International.
So there's several conferences that have sessions on cognitive assistance and augmented cognition, and I put them up on SlideShare, so you can go there and check that out. Thank you so much.